Now, France has asked schools to provide a vegetarian meal option to students daily. The rule comes under a freshly passed French climate change legislation. Government-run schools in France must provide meat-free options to the pupils. Schools have been asked to acquire meat from local butchers who have proven their environmental performance for the non-vegetarian options. French schools had to provide vegetarian options only once a week earlier, but the new legislation has been adopted after a 2-year-long trial. Now, parents will be given the option to choose meals on behalf of their kids. The catering services have also been asked to include vegetarian food in their meals in the next 2 years. The government says that the new legislation aims to move towards sustainable food and diversified protein sources. Tests conducted by the government agency show that the vegetarian meals prove to be cheaper than meat. France is hopeful that the new policy will be beneficial to curb O2 emissions. The inclusion of benefits of diversified protein sources in food training courses is now mandatory. Around 60% of meat served in schools will also be required to respect the short distribution channels from 2024. French authorities are pushing for vegetarian meals due to the sanitary concerns during the pandemic. The law also envisages a fertilizer tax against nitrogen-based fertilizers.
Le noir peut vous apporter et les professeurs également. Voilà.
Beaucoup plus contraignant puisqu'il faut mettre le masque.
Shifting focus now, Russia has sent 2 military cargo planes filled with nearly 100 tons of humanitarian aid to Cuba as the country struggles to cope with surging COVID cases and unrest. Russia's aid comes after thousands of Cubans took to the streets across the country to protest food shortages and high inflation during the pandemic. The United States sanctioned some Cuban officials after they violently cracked down on protesters, and this was the first concrete steps taken by the Biden administration to act against the alleged human rights abuses during the government crackdown. The Cuban government has blamed the protests mostly on what it calls the U.S.-financed counter-revolutionaries. So far, about 60 Cubans have been prosecuted for participating in the unprecedented demonstrations against the government earlier this month. Now, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, it has sent food, personal protective equipment, including 1 million medical masks. This gesture follows the example of the Mexican government, which has also sent aid to Cuba earlier this week. And this aid is much needed as Cuba tries to control an outbreak of COVID-19 infections. Cuba, which had managed to keep COVID-19 cases low last year, this week reported the highest contagion per capita in Latin America. The country last week reported nearly 4,000 confirmed cases per million residents, 9 times more than the world average. Now, this surge in cases, in part, is also due to the emergence of the Delta variant and has put a lot of strain on its healthcare sector and has sparked a rare anti-government protest earlier in the month.
WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.